What does it take to change the world? Sometimes the price is not merely a fortune or a lifetime of effort, but the very fabric of one's own soul. This is the story of Sigmund Freud, the man who did not just invent modern therapy, but arguably invented the modern conception of the self, and in the process subjected his own mind to the relentless pressure of his discoveries. Like any revolutionary figure, there are three sides to Freud's story. There is the myth he constructed for himself, a lonely hero of science, a conquistador of the mind on a mission to decode the human psyche. There is the caricature told by his detractors, a deranged, cocaine-addicted, sexually perverse puppet master drowning in a sea of his own unfalsifiable theories. And then, somewhere in the vortex between myth and caricature, lies the truth. A truth pieced together from his 24 volumes of published works, his thousands of personal letters, and the enduring, seismic impact of his ideas on the 20th and 21st centuries. It is Saturday, September 23, 1939, in the quiet, leafy community of Hampstead, London, a city of refuge from the Nazism that had consumed his beloved Vienna. An exiled, withered figure lays on a simple couch, a pale shadow of the intellectual titan he once was. Just a few feet away stands its famous counterpart, the psychoanalytic couch, draped in a Persian rug, the secular confessional for a new age. 7 decades of relentless inquiry into the labyrinth of the human mind are drawing to a close. Successes and failures flicker through his consciousness as he fades into darkness. His breathing is a labored, painful rasp. The years of smoking between 20 and 30 cigars a day have culminated in a verdict: inoperable mouth cancer. After more than 30 agonizing surgeries, the pain has become his entire existence. But this suffering must end on his own terms, a final assertion of the ego over the chaos of a decaying body. His doctor and friend Max Schur can no longer bear his patients' pleading. He honors their pact. A lethal dose of morphine is administered. Sigmund Freud is dead. His story, however, was just beginning. Death's relationship with great minds is often a study in tragic irony. Marie Curie was poisoned by the radiation she discovered. Alan Turing was destroyed by the society his genius helped save. For Freud, the irony was profound. The man who taught the world that there are no accidents, no meaningless slips of the tongue, met his end on a simple couch, a whisper away from the grand symbol of his life's work. This conclusion mirrors the ancient Greek myth of Icarus, a story Freud himself would have appreciated. Like Daedalus, Freud fashioned wings, not of feather and wax, but of theory and insight, to escape the prison of the unknown. He warned humanity not to fly too low, not to remain mired in the simplistic comforts of religion and denial. But he himself, in his ambition, flew perilously close to the sun. His sun was the blinding, scorching core of human nature itself, the raw, untamed energy of sexuality and aggression. Like Icarus, his intellectual wings melted, not from failure, but from the terrible heat of what he uncovered. His descent into personal tragedy, professional isolation, and historical infamy was the unavoidable price of his flight. To understand this devastating fall, we must return to the beginning. Born on May 6, 1856, in Freiburg, Moravia, now Pribor, Czech Republic, Sigmund Shlomo Freud was an outsider from birth. He was a Jew in a predominantly Catholic town within the vast Austro-Hungarian Empire, a place where anti-Semitism was a casual, atmospheric presence. This early experience of alienation may have fueled his lifelong skepticism of group identity and his fierce intellectual independence. His family life was a Freudian novel in itself. His father, Jacob, a wool merchant, was nearly 20 years older than his mother, Amalia, and had 2 grown sons from a previous marriage. Freud was born an uncle. His nephew John was a year his senior and his constant childhood rival. His bond with his young, vivacious mother was intensely close, a dynamic that critics and followers alike would later point to as the autobiographical seed of his most famous and controversial theory, the Oedipus complex. This drive to compete and dominate was not just familial. It defined his intellectual character. He was the brilliant student who graduated from the Sperl Gymnasium with honors, the voracious reader of Shakespeare and Goethe, always searching for the universal truths of the human condition. A pivotal moment came at 17 when, inspired by an essay on nature, then attributed to Goethe, he chose a career in medicine. He entered the University of Vienna in 1873, not with a passion for healing, but with a burning desire for scientific research. His early work was in neurology, including a notable study on the reproductive organs of the eel, a grounded, empirical beginning for a man whose later work would be accused of being anything but. The turning point came in the 1880s. Working with the esteemed Viennese physician Joseph Breuer, Freud encountered the case of Anna O. Bertha Pappenheim, a young woman suffering from a bewildering array of hysterical symptoms, paralysis, memory loss, disturbances of vision. Breuer had stumbled upon a remarkable treatment. When he hypnotized Anna and had her trace her symptoms back to their origins, they would often disappear. She called it the talking cure. This was the primal scene of psychoanalysis. Before Freud, mental illness was the domain of the asylum, treated with chains, ice baths, and exorcisms. The idea that a person suffering was not a sign of moral failure or divine punishment, but a coherent, meaningful story waiting to be told, was utterly revolutionary. It shifted the locus of human misery from the soul to the psyche, from sin to syntax. Freud, however, pushed further than Breuer dared. He soon abandoned hypnosis in favor of free association, encouraging patients to speak whatever came to mind, no matter how trivial, embarrassing, or nonsensical. He observed that they would inevitably circle back to painful memories that had been pushed out of awareness, repressed. It was here, in the resistance to remembering, that he located the battleground of the mind. He formalized this into a structural model, the psyche as a dynamic system in constant conflict. The primal, instinctual drives for pleasure and aggression, the ID. The rational, reality-oriented mediator, the ego. And the internalized voice of societal and parental authority, the source of guilt, the superego. This was not merely a new psychology, it was a new philosophical anthropology. It replaced the Enlightenment's vision of a rational, unified self with a fractured, haunted one, a stranger in its own house, governed by forces it could not comprehend. From this foundation, Freud constructed the towering and often unstable edifice of his life's work. In The Interpretation of Dreams, 1900, he argued that dreams were not random neural firings, but, quote, the royal road to the unconscious, a coded language of wish fulfillment. His theories on psychosexual development, the oral, anal, and phallic stages, proposed that the adult personality was forged in the crucible of early childhood experiences. And, most explosively, the Oedipus and Electra complexes suggested that the nuclear family, the supposed bedrock of civilization, was in fact a seething cauldron of incestuous desire and murderous rage. These ideas were scandalous, but their influence was immense. The Surrealist art movement, for instance, drew directly from Freudian dream theory to unlock the imagery of the subconscious. Yet, as his fame grew, so did the controversy and the criticism. His insistence on the primacy of sexuality alienated many of his followers, most notably his designated crown prince Carl Jung. Their split in 1913 was not just personal, it was a fundamental schism. Jung sought a more mystical, spiritual path, expanding the concept of libido to a general life force and introducing the idea of a quote, collective unconscious. Freud, the hard-nosed atheist, saw this as a betrayal of science, a retreat into the very religious illusion he sought to dismantle. Critics like the philosopher Karl Popper would later argue that psychoanalysis was a pseudoscience, its claims so flexible they could never be falsified. Feminist thinkers, from Karen Horney in his own time to Simone de Beauvoir later, critiqued his theories like penis envy as being profoundly androcentric, pathologizing female experience through a male lens. A 2012 survey by the American Psychological Association found that while Freud's foundational concepts, like the unconscious, are widely accepted, fewer than 5% of therapists primarily identify as psychoanalytic, a testament to the decline of his specific clinical methods. Freud's later work took a darker, more philosophical turn, shaped by the unimaginable carnage of World War I and the personal tragedies of losing his daughter Sophie and grandson Heinz. In Beyond the Pleasure Principle, 1920, he proposed his most startling and profound theory, the death drive, or thanatos. He argued that alongside eros, the drive for life, pleasure, and creation, there exists in all organic matter a parallel drive towards dissolution, a compulsion to return to an inorganic state. The aim of all life is death, he wrote bleakly. This was his attempt to explain the inexplicable, humanity's capacity for self-destruction, the horrors of war, and the repetitive, self-sabotaging patterns he observed in his patients. It was the ultimate pessimistic vision, a universe locked in an eternal struggle not between good and evil, but between life and its inevitable decay. The final years were a grim convergence of his theories and his life. The rise of the Nazis in Germany and their 1938 annexation of Austria brought the external manifestation of thanatos to his doorstep. His books were burned, his daughter Anna was arrested and interrogated by the Gestapo, and his 4 sisters would later perish in concentration camps. He escaped to London, a refugee stripped of his home and his health. While his death was a release from physical agony, his legacy remains a site of fierce contention. His work has been absorbed into the very water we drink. Concepts like the Freudian slip, ego, repression, and denial are now part of everyday language. His ideas have shaped everything from literature and film. Fight Club and Mad Men are deeply Freudian narratives, to our fundamental understanding of childhood, memory, and identity. Was he a genius or a charlatan? A liberator of the human spirit, or the architect of a new prison of determinism? The answer is perhaps both. Passion, as his life shows, is a cornerstone for success, but pride is a cruel master. For Sigmund Freud, the final chapter was a brutal reminder that even the most brilliant mapmaker of the mind can get lost in its territory. He gave us a new language to speak about our deepest selves, but in doing so, he warned us of the darkness that language could reveal. Even with the keys he forged, some doors, he discovered, remain perpetually and terrifyingly locked.